Ever wondered why we dress up in scary costumes or give treats from door to door on Halloween? Well, the roots of these traditions trace back over 2,500 years to an ancient Gaelic festival known as Samhain. Pronounced Samhain, this festival marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, a period often associated with darkness and death. Samhain was a celebration of the halfway point between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice, essentially dividing the year's lighter and darker halves.
Creepy.
This celebration was a significant event in the ancient Celtic communities across Europe, spanning regions that include present-day Ireland, Wales, and Scotland. The festival would typically kick off at dusk around October 31st and likely lasted 3 days, immersing the community in a blend of reverence, fear, and festivity.
Wow.
This was a time when the perceived boundary between the realms of the living and the dead was believed to be at its thinnest, allowing spirits to cross over into the world of the living. The Celts believed that during Samhain, their ancestors and loved ones who had passed on could return, bringing messages from the other world. The living would honor these spirits, offering them food and drink to appease them and ward off any ill will they might carry. The ancient Celts also used this time to take stock of their supplies and slaughter livestock for winter stores. Bonfires were a significant part of the celebrations, thought to attract insects, which in turn attracted bats, another hallmark of modern Halloween imagery. So when you're donning that spooky vampire outfit or carving a pumpkin for your front porch, remember that you're partaking in traditions that have been passed down for millennia. These customs have evolved and morphed over the centuries, but they all tie back to that ancient Gaelic festival of Samhain. So, Samhain was a time when the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead was said to be at its thinnest, allowing for spirits to cross over.
That's crazy.
And that, dear listeners, is just the beginning of our journey into the origins of Halloween. But why was Samhain so significant, you might ask? Well, let's delve into the heart of the matter. Samhain, as mentioned earlier, was an ancient Celtic festival that marked the end of the harvest season and the onset of winter. But it was more than just a change in seasons. It was a celebration of the balance between light and dark, a time when the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead was believed to be at its thinnest.
So, you know how you say, when you always, like you just said it earlier, why it feels eerie? Because that veil, then that's what that is. It's thinner. And so that's why it feels like, why is this day feel like weird, feel eerie? Because it's thin.
No, I said thicker.
Thicker. I'm sorry.
Thicker.
Well, she says thinner. That's when the spirits from the other side can come a little bit
over,
close.
I guess.
Yeah.
Oof.
The importance of Samhain in Celtic tradition was immense. It was the most significant of the 4 quarterly fire festivals among the ancient Celts, so much so that not celebrating it was considered a grave offense. Early texts suggest that the holiday was mandatory unless one wished to face the wrath of the gods and fall ill, or worse, die.
So
even committing a crime during the festival period would face a death sentence. Now let's talk about the rituals. Celebrants would join the Druid priests in lighting a community fire. This was no ordinary fire, mind you. It was lit using a wheel that would cause friction and spark flames. The wheel was a representation of the sun, and prayers were chanted as it spun, filling the air with an ethereal energy. Animal sacrifices were also a part of the rituals. Don't worry, no dogs were harmed. It was primarily cattle that were offered. These sacrifices were a part of the ancient community's way of appeasing the gods and seeking their blessings. The festival was not all solemn and serious, though. There were feasts and merriment. Some texts mention excessive alcohol consumption and overeating at these gluttonous feasts.
So think about that now, just on that alone. Back before we were, we tighten our relationship with God, getting closer with God. Let's say when you go to Halloween parties and events, what you want to do? You want to be in Halloween costumes, get drunk. These are all pre-traditions that made Samhain and Halloween a long time ago. This all the things they did back in the day, and a lot of things that. Did you know that a lot of witches still celebrate that holiday to this day as that holiday?
I wouldn't doubt it.
But it wasn't just for the sake of indulgence. It was believed that by reaching a certain food or alcohol threshold, one could communicate with the gods and ask them directly for healthy crops and good fortune.
Look at that.
And what about the dead? How were they involved in these celebrations, you may ask? Well, let's delve into the intriguing rituals of Samhain that were dedicated to honoring the departed. During Samhain, the veil separating the realms of the living and the dead was believed to be at its thinnest. This allowed spirits to cross over, hearing the living and perhaps even speaking back.
That's why
The
it
ancient
felt
Celts
eerie.
didn't fear this spectral interaction. Instead, they embraced it as a special time to remember and honor their ancestors. One of their most poignant traditions was the laying out of dumb suppers. The term dumb here doesn't refer to a lack of intelligence, but rather to silence. These were meals prepared and consumed in complete
Why look like he got 2 Oreos on his eyes right now?
quiet, a tribute to those who had passed on. Each family would invite their ancestors to join them at the supper, creating a unique atmosphere where the living and the dead could share a meal, albeit in an ethereal sense. The food was eaten only after the ancestors were invited, giving them the first taste, so to speak. The silence during the meal was believed to allow the spirits to communicate with the family, providing a chance for interaction until they departed at the end of the supper.
No, thank you.
And what happened after this solemn meal? The atmosphere would lighten as the focus shifted to the younger members of the family. Children would play games, their laughter and merriment serving to entertain the visiting spirits. Meanwhile, adults would converse with their spectral guests, sharing the news and events of the past year. This practice might seem strange or even eerie to us today, but for the ancient Celts, it was a comforting tradition, a way of keeping their loved ones' memories alive. They believed that by honoring their ancestors in this way, they were securing their family's good fortune for the coming year.
Wow.
So, as we can see, Samhain was not just about warding off evil spirits or celebrating the harvest. It was also a time of remembrance, a time to honor the dead and celebrate the cycle of life and death. Afterwards, children would play games to entertain the dead, while adults would update the dead on the past year's news.
Wow.
But
look
what
at
about
that.
the supernatural creatures that were said to roam during Samhain? Now, let's delve into the fascinating topic of how the ancient Celts protected themselves from these mystical beings. It was believed that during Samhain, the boundary separating the world of the living from the supernatural realm was at its thinnest. This allowed not just the spirits of the deceased to cross over, but also a variety of supernatural creatures. One such creature was the Sidhe, a term used to describe the fairies in Celtic mythology. These weren't the cute, benevolent fairies we often imagine today. Oh no, the Sidhe were known to be mischievous, and at times even malevolent. To
Wow.
safeguard themselves and their lands, the Celts prepared offerings for these fairies, which were left outside their villages and in their fields. It was a kind of peace offering, a way to appease these mystical beings and keep them from wreaking havoc.
Wow.
But there was another, more personal threat that the Celts had to guard against. The thin veil between the realms meant that they could potentially come face to face with the spirits of people they once knew. Imagine bumping into your old neighbor or a long-lost relative on a dark, cold Samhain night.
No.
To avoid such
no.
unnerving encounters, the Celts came up with an ingenious solution. They dressed up as animals or monsters. By donning these costumes, they hoped to be unrecognizable to any spirit they might cross paths with.
You remember that old movie Pumpkinhead?
Yes.
That's exactly what that vibes it give me when I see that.
Mm-hmm.
That was so creepy and it was so eerie when that movie used to come on. You remember that?
Yeah. And whatever the truths were behind it, people didn't even zoom into it
Right.
and the origination of what the origin of the pumpkin and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a way to blend in, to become part of the supernatural world that had merged with their own. It was also a way to scare off any malevolent spirits that might be lurking around. After all, who wants to tangle with a fearsome beast or a terrifying monster?
Yeah, not
So
I.
the tradition of dressing up in scary costumes, which is so integral to our modern Halloween celebrations, has its roots in
But if it's a spirit, you can't fight a spirit.
No, you can't. Spiritually. That's the spiritual battle.
Right. So doesn't matter if you come in contact with a beast or not. If it's in the spirit realm, ain't nothing you can do.
No, not
Pray, call in the name of Jesus.
you can't fight a spiritual war in the physical. You can't.
No.
The only one that can truly fight is God.
Mm-hmm.
And his angels are protecting you that can fight against those other angels, because when you go in the spirit realm, you're calling the forth of those heavenly spirits to protect you. You can't go in and say, I'm gonna punch this demon.
No.
Please, you will get played. They have been here way longer than us.
And you can't sage a demon either. You can't
Exactly.
sage out
That's
evil
another.
and negative spirits. That does nothing for the spirit realm.
That's
Nothing.
another one for y'all, man.
Nothing.
I've seen people do that so many times and been in places where for cleanse the energy.
And you're actually inciting something in the spirit realm, but that's a whole nother video, and we don't want to get on that. And I know the comment section gonna be full of ignorance.
I
but
hope
it's all
it is.
good
I hope it
because
is.
do your homework.
This ancient practice of self-preservation and spiritual camouflage. So, dressing up as a monster or an animal was a useful tactic to avoid being recognized by a spirit
That
of someone you
dog.
used to know before they died. So how did we get from ancient Samhain to modern Halloween?
Right.
Well, it's a story that spans centuries and cultures, adapting, evolving, and absorbing new customs along the way. In the early centuries AD, the Roman Empire conquered much of the Celtic territory. This led to a blending of cultures, with Roman festivals like Feralia, a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead, and a day to honor Pomona,
Oh, look
the
at
Roman
that.
goddess
Look
of
at the
fruit
hands on
and
it.
trees, getting mixed up with the Celtic traditions of Samhain. It's
Why does the pumpkin look like it's animated, but it's got hands?
Skeleton hands. Weird.
believed that our tradition of bobbing for apples on Halloween comes from this blend of Samhain and the festival of Pomona. But the transformation of Samhain into Halloween as we know it didn't stop there. In the 7th century, the Christian Church designated November 1st as All Saints' Day, a time to honor saints and martyrs. The night before became known as All Hallows' Eve, eventually shortened to Halloween. The Christian Church hoped to replace the Celtic Festival of the Dead with a
Halloween.
similar church-approved holiday. The tradition of trick-or-treating is thought to
And that's so funny. You don't supposed to celebrate it, but the church, the early day church, created the holiday to get people off the Celtic witchcraft stuff, and they moved them over to Halloween to merge it over. But it still contains the same essence. But they had to do something that was going to still keep their a tradition, but not as dark. That's funny. And it's still
Well, I mean,
dark.
it's just I was gonna say it's just as
It's still dark.
witches be brewing.
They do.
have originated from a 9th century European custom called souling. On November 2nd, All Souls' Day, Christians would walk from village to village begging for soul cakes, squares of bread with currants, in return for prayers for the dead relatives of the donors. This was believed to help the souls in purgatory. Finally, the practice of dressing up in costumes harks back to the Celtic tradition of donning animal skins and heads to confuse wandering spirits during Samhain. Over time, as the festival morphed into Halloween, these garbs evolved into the wide range of costumes we see today. So, from ancient Celtic rituals to Roman festivals, from Christian attempts to replace pagan holidays to practices born of superstition and survival, the celebration of Halloween has been shaped by many hands over the centuries. And that's how we ended up with the Halloween traditions.
Wow.
Wow.